This is the third video in this Spotify clone series. So up to this point, we've built out this nice UI and we've also created our database and we've connected our Postgres database to our application. So to connect our Postgres database, we use the platform called Zeet. So Zeet is a CI/CD development platform that helps you get to production and operate in production. So it has a lot of cloud features, and one of them is creating and deploying managed databases. So in the last video, we created a managed Postgres database on Zeet and we connected it to our Django application. In the next video, we're going to be using Zeet to deploy our application onto the web. So make sure you have an account on Zeet and you are signed in so you can follow along with this tutorial. There'll be a link in the description below so you can easily access Zeet. So once you have that done, without wasting any time, let's get straight into this video. The first thing we're going to do is to take care of user authentication. So we're going to allow a user to sign up to our application, log in and log out of our application. Then we're going to add a feature that is going to allow a user to see the weekly top artists, and we're also going to do the same to allow a user to see the weekly top songs. And after that, we're going to introduce a feature that is going to allow users to actually listen to music. Then the user is also going to be able to see the profile of an artist, and the user is going to be able to search for songs, and we're also going to add a couple more features. So let's get started. Now the first thing that we're going to do is to take care of authentication. So when a user first comes to this our application, if they are not logged in, we want to first redirect them to the login page to make sure they are logged in and make sure that they have an account before being brought here. So what we're going to do is to just go back into the code, and I'm just going to quit this index tab. So right here in views, I'm actually going to create 3 views, and I'm just going to copy this to save time. So I'm going to say paste this, I'm going to say login, and this should also be, if I come into templates, the HTML page for this view, it is login.html. So this should be login.html. I'm also going to have sign up. Just going to say sign up, and then we're also going to have one more view, which is logout. But this logout is going to be quite different. We're not really going to return any of this, so I'm just going to pass for now. Now that we have this, the next thing to do is to take care of the URLs. So I want to have 3 new URLs. The first one is going to be sign up. Or actually, we can just make it login first. Same order as the views. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to get rid of this. I'm just going to say sign up. Sign up and sign up. And I'm going to say logout. Copy this, paste it. Now that we have all of these views done, the next thing to do now is, if we come in here into, so if I come here and go to /sign up, you can see automatically it opens up the sign up page, which is this nice looking UI that I built. And if I come back in here into signup.html, you can see right here, the reason why the styling worked automatically is because we're not really using any external CSS file here. So as you can see, we're not connecting to any external CSS. For this, I just used TailwindCSS because I didn't really need to do a lot. It was just basic styling. So I just quickly used TailwindCSS for that. And that's why we have this nice looking UI. Now, what we want to do is to take care of the actual implementation. I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to come into views. Now, right here in views, we want to first, so we have this form. Let me explain this real quick. We have this form. Whenever a user inputs or fills this form and click on register, we need to get all of those details, then submit it into our database. But before we submit into our database, we need to do some checks. So we need to check if that username has already been taken, if that email has been taken, or if the password that the user input is not the same. So we need to check and test for all of that before we actually register that user in our database. So I'm going to come back in here, and so before we can even do anything here in the view, we need to come into signup.html. So right now I'm just going to close this, and right here we're going to have a form, and that form is where, so right here you can see that we have this form. So this form, I'm just going to make this separate so you can see it very well. Now this form is basically the code that outputs this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say action, and I'm going to leave it blank. Now, when I leave this blank, this means that when a user clicks on the submit button, so this register button, it's going to take all those form, it's going to take the value that the user input and submit it to this page. Now, if I leave the action as blank, this means that it's submitting it back to this same page. So now if it submits this back to this same page, which is /signup, it's going to come here and submit it to this signup URL. Then it's going to take all those values and go into views and look for the signup function. Now we can access those values in the signup function. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to explain this to you. And so if we come down here, after inputting the action, the next thing is to input the method. So this method is just asking us, how do we want to submit this form? How do we want to send this form to the backend, basically? So there are two methods. You can say get or post. So for this particular situation, post is more secure, because whenever we're sending, or whenever a user tries to submit, if we are using a get method, it's going to take all those values and display all of those values in the URL bar. We don't want this, because this is password, this is emails. We don't want all of that details in the URL bar. But when you use a post method, it's not going to show in the URL bar. It's kind of more secure. So post method is always used when you need to submit data that is more secure. Now, whenever we're using a post method in Django, we need to add CSRF token. We're just going to say CSRF_token. And now, right now, the next thing we need to do is to just give all of these names. So for this username, I'm pretty sure this is username. I'm just going to say name equals username. That's literally all we need to do. And for the email also, we just need to say name equals email. For the password, I'm just going to say name equals password. And then for the repeat password, I'm just going to say name equals password 2. This is good. This is literally what we need. And then if I come in here where we have this submit button or this register button, what we need to do is to give it a type. So for now, Django or HTML just sees this as a normal button. So if we click on register, it's probably not going to submit this form. The reason why is because it's just a normal button. But if we say type equals submit, now it knows that because this button is under this form right here, whenever a user tries to click on this button, which is known as submit, it basically submits all of this form or the values in this form to this page. Now that that is done, we can now access whatever the user inputs in our views. So now in our views, what we're just going to do is to come here and sign up. And the first thing we need to do is to make sure that whenever a user comes to this page using a post method, we need to get all the requests. So let me explain the difference between that post and get again. So if a user just comes to this page normally, like just goes to this URL or this particular page is being rendered using a get method, right? So, but if a user submits this form, then it's going to be sent, or that form is going to be submitted using a post method. That means the new URL or this page is going to be reloaded, but this time around with a post method. I hope that makes sense. So that means what we can use to distinguish now, we can use this method to know when a user is just coming to this page normally or a user is trying to submit a data, right? So if a user is trying to submit a data, the method is going to be post. So we're going to say if request the method is equal to post. Now, if a user is trying to come to this page using a post method, that means form is being submitted, right? So now we're just going to say email equals request dot post. So this is the format. And then we have to put the name of that particular field. If I come in here and the name of the email field is just email, and I just paste that in. Now what is going to happen is when a user inputs their email and click on register, because we are sending all of this to this particular view, whatever the user inputs in that field is going to be saved in this Python variable. Now we can do whatever we want. We can submit it to the database. We can make different checks, but this is literally what we need for now. So now that we have this, we can use this same tactic for the rest of them. So we can say username, and because we know the name of that field is username, we can say password, and we know the name of the first password field is password, and this one is just password 2, and the name is password 2. I'm just going to come here and write 2. So now we know that we have every single thing that the user inputs. So once they input or fill this form and click on register, all the values in here is now being stored in this Python variable. Now we can do whatever we want with it. So the first thing we want to do, before I even continue, I just want to first have an else statement. So all of this, we said if the request.method is post, then we want to start doing all of this. But if it's not post, so else, that means the user is just trying to come to this page normally, then we just want to render that page normally. So that is why we're doing this. But if it's a post method, the user is trying to sign up or register to our platform. So we've gotten all the details. The first thing we need to check is if these two passwords are same. Because if the user input password that are not same, then we want to tell them, yo, this password is not the same. You need to check that. We're going to say if password is equals to password 2. That means if they are the same. For now, let's pass. We'll do something. But else, that means if these passwords are not the same, then we need to tell the user that there is an error. So for us to pass a message back to this page saying there is an error, saying your password is not the same, we need to use something called messages. But before we can use messages, we need to import it. I'm going to come here and say from Django.contrib import messages. So this is how we can import messages. So now we can send a message to our template. So for us to send a message to our template, what we're just going to do is to now say messages. So I'm going to come here and say messages dot info, and then we're going to say request like this. And this is just saying, we can say the password. Now we have to input the message we're trying to send. Just say password not matching. Now once we have this, we can now redirect them back to the sign up page. So say return redirect back to this sign up page. So redirect is not being shown. So for us to import redirect, we just need to come here and say redirect, because we can import redirect from Django.shortcut. So we can just import it directly. Now we can come back here and we can actually test this. For now, let me just say print password same. So I want to test if these messages is working. So before I can test it, I actually need to have like a HTML code that shows this message if there is a message. I'm going to come back to signup.html, and right here, what I'm just going to do is on top of the, so I'm going to come right on top of the form. So right on top of this form, I'm just going to paste in a div tag, and I'm going to explain what that does. So if I come here like this, so what this div tag does is that it loops through the messages. So as I said, once there is an error and we send a message, this message is being sent back to the sign up page. Now we can access it. So we'll say for message in messages, just print out the message, and we're giving it an h5 tag, and we're just ending our for loop, and then we're just adding a little bit of styling here to say that that h5 tag should be color red. Now this is just so that it shows that there is an error. Now if I save this and I come back here, I'm just gonna fill this form. Let me just say Tommy. I'm just gonna say Tommy@gmail.com, and now I'm gonna input password that is not the same. If I hit register, you can see that it gave me that error saying the password is not matching. This is good. Now we know that works. We can continue. Now I'm gonna come back in here, and what I need to do is to continue after checking if the password is same. So if the password is same, we now want to check if the email already exists. That means if another user has already signed up to this platform with the same email. But for us to do this, we need to import the user model. So this is kind of like importing the user database that Django created for us as default. So from Django.contrib, just gonna say .auth .models import user, and also import auth. So this user is the user model, and this auth is what we're going to use to actually authenticate or log a user in. now that we have this, we're just going to come back here, and what we're just going to do is to say, I'm going to remove this. I'm going to say if user dot object dot filter email equals email. We're going to say dot exists. So if this is true, that means the email is taken. So we're going to do the same messages thing and say messages.info request email taken. And then we're just going to return redirect the user back to the sign up page. So turn. So that is taken care of. But now the next thing we want to check, if this is not true, we're just going to bypass this. We're just going to say elif. So we want to check if the password is same and this is not true. So that means the password is same and the user email is not already taken. The next thing we want to check is if the username is already taken. So say if user dot object dot filter username equals username dot exists. Then we're going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to actually copy all of this to save time. And now I'm going to say username taken. Username taken. I'm going to save this. But else, so if all of this is true, that means if this is true, the password is same. And if the email is not taken and the username is also brand new, is not taken, then we want to register this user on our platform. To do this, you're just going to say user equals user dot objects dot create user. And now we're going to give, say username is equals to this username right here. Username equals username. Email equals email, which is this email right here. And then password. So password, so we can just give it any of these two because it's the same thing. So we're just going to say password equals password. We need to make sure this is one dot. And now what we're just going to do is to say user dot save. Now what we can now do is we can log the user in. So this has successfully registered the user, but after registering the user, let me just say log user in. I'm just going to comment this out. So after the user has been registered, instead of taking the user to then log in again, which is going to be long, we're just going to automatically log the user in. So say user underscore login equals auth dot authenticate, and username, we're going to authenticate the user using username and password. Username equals username, and then we're just going to say password equals password, and we're just going to say auth.login request user underscore login and return redirect back to the home page. Now, so if all of this is true, we've successfully registered the user, then we're going to log the user in and then redirect them back to the home page. Now let's actually test this out. I'm going to come to this page again. Now I'm going to say Tommy at gmail.com. Just going to put in password and register. Now let's see if this takes us to the home page. That means we have successfully been registered. Boom, we are in the home page. We didn't get any error. This simply means that we have been registered on the platform, which is good. But one more thing, how does the user know that I am logged into this platform? Because for all we know, this is how it looks like even when the user is not logged in. What I'm going to do is to put a specific message here that says welcome user. So instead of user, I'm going to put the user's username. So to do this is actually very simple and just going to take a few seconds. So open up this and come into index.html. So right here where we have welcome, so we're just going to scroll to where we see welcome user. You just need to do user.username. So you need to have two curly braces, and in that curly braces type in user.username, and you could actually put whatever you want here. You could show the user their email, and you could just say user.email, but that doesn't really make sense for this use case. So we're just going to leave it as username. Now, if I come here and hit refresh, you are now going to see that it shows me Tommy because I'm logged in as Tommy. So we've successfully added the functionality for a user to sign up to the platform. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to take care of the login and logout function. So right now, a user can sign up to our application and they will automatically be logged in. But now, let's say I want to log out of this page and then log into another account or sign up again as another user. Then how do I do that? The first thing I'm going to do is to make a user be able to log out, because if they don't log out, there's really no way they can log in. So first of all, I'm going to allow a user to log out. So what I'm just going to do is to come back in here, and I'm going to come into URLs. We already have the URL, but for the view, I'm going to come into logout. So in this logout view, we just need to make a user be able to log out. So the first thing I'm going to do is to make sure that a user is logged in before they can access the logout view. For me to do this, I need to use a decorator named login required. So I'm going to say from django.contrib.auth import .decorators, because now we want to use a decorator. We can say import login required. Now we can use this login required not just for this logout, but also for index and any other thing we need. So let's say we don't want a user to be able to even access the home page if they are not logged in. That's where we use this login required. Let me show you how to do it. So right here in logout, what I'm just going to do is to say login required. Now, when I say a login required, it knows that for a user to access this view, they need to be logged in. But what if they are not logged in? How does Django know where to redirect them to? So I'm going to give it login URL. I'm going to say login. So if they are not logged in, it's going to redirect them to the login URL, and they have to do that before accessing this page. So now for us to actually make a user be able to log out, it's so easy. We just need to say auth.logout. So take a request, and that is going to log them out. But what do we want to do after? We want to redirect them to the login page. Return redirect to login. So after they are logged out, they should go to the login page. Now what I'm going to do is to come into index, and right here where we have this logout, as you can see, we have a link. This logout, just so you know, is this particular button right here. So I'm just going to say /logout. So when I say /logout, once a user clicks on this, you're going to see that it works. So I'm just going to refresh this page, and now I'm going to click on logout, and you're going to see that it's going to take me back to the login page. But we haven't even taken care of the login page, so a user can't really log in right now. So what we need to do is to take care of that. But before we take care of that, I want to add login required to the home page. I'm going to come into views. I'm just going to copy this real quick, and I'm going to scroll up. I'm going to paste this. So now I'm pasting this so that if a user is not logged in, they won't be able to access the home page. So what I'm going to do now is to try to go to the home page. This is the home page, and as you can see, it redirects me yet back to the login page. But there's something good that Django does. So it knows that after we finish logging in, the next page to take the user to is /. Now this is because I tried to come to this /URL, which is the home page, without logging in. So it first redirect me to login, and then once I've logged in, it's going to take me back to the page I was trying to access initially. So Django does this automatically. We don't need to write anything to do that ourselves, which is good. So now that we have that, we can take care of this login page. So similarly to what we did in the sign up page, I'm just going to come into opening my login.html, and what I'm just going to do is to distinguish the form. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing, and I'm just going to say action equals blank, and I'm going to say method equals post, and I'm just going to actually come here and copy the CSRF token, paste that in here. So like this, and I'm going to give this names, and I'm just going to say name equals username, and for the password, the same thing, name equals password. Now I can save this. The next thing I'm going to do before I leave this is to just come here and copy these messages, so these error messages. So if there is an error, it's just going to show that automatically, and I'm just going to paste that in, and right here I'm just going to make sure the indentations is right. Now this should be good. The last thing I actually need to do is under the button, we need to make sure the type is submit. So now that the type is submit, that should be good. And one more thing, so right here where it says don't have an account, sign up. When a user click on this sign up, it doesn't go anywhere, so we want to take them to the sign up page. So what I'm just going to do is to say /sign up like this, and I'm actually going to do the same thing for sign up. Sign in here, I'm just going to say /login. Good. So now that we have all of this, we can come back to views, and we're just going to come into login. Now login is quite straightforward compared to the signing up, so we just need to do exactly the same thing we did. We're just going to say if, actually we're just going to copy this like this. This is literally what we need, but instead of email we need password. So we're going to get rid of this. So now if request.method is equals to post, then username and password, we're going to get those two. For now I'm just going to say pass, and actually we don't need to pass because I wanted to have an else, but we don't really need that for this. We could just go straight forward and say user equals to auth.authenticate username equals username. So authenticating using this username, and I'm also going to do the same using password, and password equals password. Good. So the only thing we need to check for the login view is just to check if the user is not in our database. We're just going to say if user is not none, then I'm just going to say log the user in. Log user in. Just going to comment this out for now. But if the user is none, so I'm just going to say pass. Else, and I'm going to send a message. So let me explain what I'm doing. If user is not none means, so if a user is none, that means this particular credential is not present in our database. That means this user hasn't registered. So that means the user is none. But if the user is not none, that means it's the opposite of that happened. That means we actually found this user in our database. So that means we can log the user in. So I'm just going to try to log the user in right now. And I'm just going to say auth.login request user, and I'm just going to redirect the user to the home page after being logged in. Good. So now that we've taken care of that view, what if the user is none? That means we didn't find this user in the database. We're going to send an error message. So say message.info request. We're just going to say credentials invalid. Good. And then we're going to return them back to this login page. So return redirect login. Good. So now I'm just going to come here and try it because this view is done. I'm just going to come back in here, and I'm just actually going to refresh this page. And let me try to log in with a user that we haven't registered. So I'm just going to say Tim. Just going to give it some random password. Nope. And as you can see, it says credentials invalid. Check the database, it didn't find this user. That means the credential is invalid. But if I try to log in with the ToMe user that I created earlier, you're going to see that it's going to take me to the home page successfully. So that should log me in. So as you can see right now, I've successfully been logged in to this page. Now, before we move forward, I want to introduce you to the API that we're going to be using in this video. So for this video, to build this Spotify clone, we're going to have to access an API that already has a ton of music on it. It has all the artists, all the details, so we don't have to start like building all of that ourselves. So that is what an API is for, and we're going to be utilizing an API in this video. So what I'm going to do is to go to Rapid API. So this Rapid API is kind of like an API hub where you can just search for different APIs and you'll find whatever you're looking for. This video is actually not sponsored by Rapid API in any way. We're just going to use it for this video because I can easily find a Spotify API or a music API for this particular course. I'm just going to quit this. So you can go to rapidapi.com, or there's going to be a link for the particular API that we're going to be using on Rapid API in the description. So you can also just check it out directly from there. And right here, this is the API. So when you go to Rapid API, you have to create an account, then click the link in the description, which is this Spotify scraper. And this Spotify scraper is just an API that is constantly updated, so there's always music and everything is there. It's kind of like an API that scrapes all the details from Spotify and YouTube and SoundCloud. So we're not just going to be using data from Spotify. I decided to go with this particular API because it has YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and it also allows us to have playback. So playback meaning like we can actually play music on this particular app that we're building. So this is the Spotify scraper, and I'm just going to show you how to use it. So first of all, the first thing we're going to do is right here, this top artist right now is just like dummy data that I just like made. But what I'm going to do is to actually use, if I come here, you're going to see that we have something. I'm just going to close this. So this Spotify scraper, once again, it has various different endpoints. So it has tracks, home, search, everything you need. So we're going to utilize most of this for this course. Now, if I come down to the chart endpoint, and if I see list top tracks, so under list top tracks, you're going to see that I'm able to list the top tracks. Okay, this is actually top tracks, but what we need for what I'm talking about, which is this, is top artist. So we're going to come over to list top artist, and as you can see, under this list top artist, we have an API that is able to do this for us. So all you just need to do is to have an API key, but you don't even really need to care about that, because once you create an account and come to this Spotify scraper, Rapid API automatically places your API key when needed. So all you just need to do is so right now I'm just going to switch to Python, and I'm going to use requests right here. And now this is the code. This is literally the code that you need to run this endpoint. So to send a request to this endpoint. So if I scroll down, you don't really need to input any of this. So I just really hope that you have a basic knowledge of APIs, so that you can kind of understand what I mean by endpoints and what APIs actually are. So if you don't have a basic knowledge of API, I have a video on my channel. Just search introduction to APIs, you see that there. And so as you can see, this chat endpoint right here, we can see list top artist. And if I just try to run this, so I'm just going to say test endpoint, that's actually going to run that endpoint and going to give me a result. So you can see that right now this is the response. It's saying weekly top artist. So this is the top artist for this particular week. So when we implement this API, when a user comes to our application every week, there's going to be new top artists. So it's not just going to be the same artist forever. So as you can see, it gives us the top 200 artists, which is a lot. So what we're just going to do is, so if I open one, you're going to see the artist and the artist ID. Now this ID is the Spotify ID to the artist profile, right? This is the artist name, and then this is the artist Spotify URL, and this is the visual. So this visual is where we can see the artist profile picture. If I come here, you're going to see we have a URL to the artist profile picture. Now this is good. This is what we need. What I'm just going to do is to come in here, and I'm actually going to copy this code. Now, for us to implement this particular top artist into our code and for us to print some data here, I'm going to show you what we need to do. So we're going to come here, and on top of this index, we're actually going to create a new function. And this function is just going to be the function that gets the top artist. So I'm just going to say top artist. But now I'm just going to pass. So what we're going to do is this function is going to run all of this. So it's going to run, so send a request to this particular endpoint, run all of this, and then this is going to just return the response. So the response, which is going to be the full artist, so the artist name, the artist URL, and the artist ID. So it's going to return all of that right here whenever this is run. So what I just need to do is to paste in what I copied. Gonna do this, And for this import, I just need to import it like right here, which is good. Import request, I'm going to report that outside. And this is what we need. So we don't need to touch any of this. And we have our response. So this response right now, if I print this response.json, it's going to be right here. It's going to be all of this, which is what we just ran. So let me just like this is the response it's going to give us all of this, but we don't want all of this response, right? It's going to give print it as a JSON response, and I could actually test this out, but there's no point because we can already see what the output is right here. So what I'm going to do is to come here, instead of saying print response.json, what I'm just going to do is to put response.json into a variable. So I'm going to say response data going to be equals to response.json. Now we can do whatever we want. What I'm going to do is to create artist info. I'm going to create an empty list. Now this empty list is where I'm going to store all of the artist data. So the data I'm going to get is the artist URL, the artist name, and the artist ID. Those are just the three I need. And let me tell you why. It's because we need the artist name. That is what we're going to show here. We need the artist URL, and what I mean by URL is the artist image URL. That is what we're going to show here. And the ID, so when a user clicks on this artist, we need to know what artist they clicked on so we can take them to that artist profile page, right? That's why we need the ID. Now I'm going to come back here, and what I'm just going to do is to say I'm going to have to loop through all the artists in this response data. Let me come back in here and see how we can do that. So if I come back in here, so in this, I'm just going to see right here, I can do this. So in this, just going to do this so you can see that a little bit better. We don't really have too much of a flexibility. I'm going to put that back. So in this right here, you can see that we have something in the response, which is a list in the response that says artists. So what I'm going to do is to check if this artist is present in that response. So I'm first going to say if artists, actually we just to make sure we don't have any typographical error. There's actually no point, let's just type it out. So if artists like this in response data, remember this response data is basically all of this. So we're checking if there is an artist list in this response data. So if that is true, then what we're going to do is to say for artists, we're going to loop through all of this list. Remember, this is a list, as you can see here with the square bracket. So we're going to loop through all the values in this list, and we're going to say for artists in response data artist, right? So this is what we need to do, but we need to make sure this has parentheses. Now, for artists in response data artists, now what this is saying is for each of these artists right here in this artist, so we say response data artist. Remember that this is, think of it like a dictionary. So think of this JSON like a Python dictionary. So if we're trying to get this artist in the response data, we use a square bracket, and this artist is the key name. That's what we're saying for artists in response data. What we're going to do is to then say name equals to artist. So let's say we want to get, if I come in here, now for every single artist, anything we are doing here is for each of these artists right here, each of the elements in this list. So let's take one for example. So we want to get the name. So we're going to say artist dot get name. So I'm just going to say artist dot get, in a bracket, name. Now we could leave it like this, but let's say there's a problem with just that particular element and it doesn't show the name or it doesn't display the name. We're just going to have a default message that says no name, right? So no name shown. Now we have the name. The next thing is to, let's see, we need to get the ID. So the ID is right here. We're going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to say artist underscore ID equals to, I'm just gonna copy all of this, paste it. Now I'm gonna say the ID right here. I'm getting the ID, but if there is no ID for some reason, we're just gonna replace it with no ID. So we have the artist ID. The last thing is to get the avatar URL. So I'm just gonna say avatar URL. Now this avatar URL right here, if I come in here, avatar URL is, if I come into visuals, avatar, we're going to open the first one. This is the URL we need to get. But now as you can see, this is going to be quite more complex than just getting this, because this is the first thing we see in each element. So this is the first values in each element. But for us to get the actual avatar URL or the profile picture of that particular artist, we need to come into visuals. Then we need to go into avatar. Then we need to look for the first element in avatar. Then we can get URL. So let's do this. Let's kind of do it step by step. So what I'm going to do now is to say artist dot get. What is the first thing? The first thing is visuals. We're going to say comma. Let's just leave this blank. So this, once again, this blank just means if for some reason we don't have visuals in that particular element, it's just going to be a blank dictionary, because these visuals, as you can see, it is a dictionary. Now the next thing we're going to do is to say dot get. Now what is the next one after visuals? Avatar. Avatar. Now avatar is a list, so I'm just going to say square brackets, but in there, what we have in that list is, as you can see, is just a blank dictionary. So we can just come in here and just give it a blank dictionary. So we don't have a blank dictionary in that list, but what I'm saying is, for some reason, if we're not able to get avatar, we're just going to return a list that has a dictionary that is blank. Hopefully that makes sense. So what we're now going to do, since we are now in avatar, we want to get the first element in that list, which is this. So we're going to say, to get the first element, because now we're dealing with a list, we use square brackets 0, and now we can say dot get. So we're in the first element. In that case, it is this particular element. Now we can just say dot get URL. Dot get URL. And once again, if for some reason we can't find URL, we just say no URL. Now I really hope this makes sense. We're going to test this out later. Now what I'm just going to do is to append all of this info that we got into the artist info list that we created. I'm just going to say artist info dot append. Now I think I should append it like as a tuple, right? And each of the elements is going to be name. We're going to append name. Then we're going to append the avatar URL, and then we're going to append the artist ID. Good. So now that we have that, literally this is done. What we just need to do is to return artist info. Now this is good. So if anywhere in the whole program or anywhere in the views of this page, we just run top artist, it's gonna get us the current top artist. Now let's try that. So the first thing that we're gonna do to try this is so I'm just gonna take top artist, just gonna copy that, and right here in index, I'm gonna come into index, which is the home page, and I'm just gonna say artist, let me just say artists underscore info equals to top artist. So what I'm just doing is top, okay, there is a problem. I'm just going to say top artist. So what I'm just doing is I'm calling this top artist, and it's going to return me with the current top artist and all the information, and it's just going to store it in a variable called artist info, right? So now what I'm going to do is to just send this into the index.html. So I'm just going to create dictionary called context, and I'm just going to say artist info like this should be artist info. like this, and then have a comma at the end. And for me to pass it to the HTML, I'm just gonna do this. Just gonna copy that once again properly. Good. This should work, but before we test this, let's make sure this actually works. So what I'm gonna do is when we run this home page, let's just print artist info. So now I'm gonna bring this up and I'm gonna come back in here. I'm gonna come here and just run this home page again. And let's see if it prints us the artist info. So I'm going to scroll here. It's going to look a bit messy, but look, it literally prints us all of the information we need. So as you can see, we have a list, and the list composed of tuples. So it gives us the Taylor Swift, gives us the avatar, and it gives us the ID. Next is Drake, the avatar and the ID. Bad Bunny, avatar and the ID. Good. This is literally all we need. Now we can just get rid of printing this because we don't want to do that every single time a user comes to the home page. Just gonna save this, but now we know that those details was successful. We retrieved those details successfully, and we've passed those details to the index.html. Now we can come into index.html and we can make the changes to make these artists, each of this, the actual top artist. So for us to do this, what we just need to do is to come into where we have top artists, and I'm actually going to remove a lot of stuff. So I'm going to remove all of this artists. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove all of this. So this is gone, and this. So I'm just going to have the first one. We don't need to add more no more because this is going to be dynamic. So I'm just going to have the first one right here, which is just this artist card. So right here and right here. So now that we have that list of artists, what we're going to do is to loop through it. So I'm just going to say for artists in artist underscore info, and I'm going to end the for loop here. And for what I'm going to do is to now say, instead of this particular image right here, I'm going to say artists dot. So what is this image? Is this image the first, second, or third element in the tuple? So I'm just going to scroll up to the tuple that we printed out here and just check. So if you can see, the first element is Taylor Swift, so this represents 0. The second element is the image, this represents 1, and the third element is the ID, which represents 2. So for image, it's going to be artist.1 because that is the second element. Now the alt, which is also known as the name, is going to be artist.0 because that's the first element. Now the actual name is also going to be artist.0 right here, like this. This should actually work right now. Let's go and test this out. We're just going to come here and hit refresh. So what it's doing, sending a request to that particular endpoint, and as you can see, this works successfully. So Taylor Swift, Drake, it basically gives us all the top artists, and we can just keep scrolling to see more. Good. Now we have seen that this top artist feature has worked successfully. The last thing that we're just going to do is to add like an A tag. So once a user clicks on one of these artists, we want it to take them to a particular link, and that link is going to be the page of this artist. We're going to do that later in this video, where we're going to be taking care of or building the profile for each artist. We're going to do that, but for now, let's just make these cards clickable. I'm going to come back, and right here where we have the under artist card in this div, I'm just going to say A. I'm going to give you an A tag, and I'm going to end that A tag right here like this, and all of this is just going to be under it, and the link is just going to be, let me just give it, let it be blank for now, or I'm just going to give it hashtag for now. And so I'm going to give that an hashtag, And let me save this and see how this looks like. Hit refresh. And okay, so as you can see, that works. If I come on this and click it, it should take me somewhere, but it's not going to take me anywhere because the link is taking me to is an hashtag, so it's just going to remain on this page. But if I told it to like log me out or take me to the profile page, we are going to do that later in this video. But the only problem is now that we are clicking it, as you can see, it's having this like weird red lines. That is having some decoration. So let's just get rid of that real quick because we don't want that to be there. So we're just going to have a styling to the A tag, and let's say text decoration. Let's set it to none. We set text decoration to none. There shouldn't be any colors and it should be default. Now let's try this out again and let's see. So as you can see, there's no line under it. Even if I click it, you don't see any line. Now this is good because we're able to get the top artist and actually show that data right here. Now that we've taken care of this top artist, the next thing we're going to include is the top songs. So right here where we see browse all, normally I just made this template for it to just show different kind of genres, but I think what we can just do is to just show the top music right now and display everything here. That's what we're going to do. And let me show you what endpoint we're going to use in this Spotify scraper API. So right here, just under the on top of the top artist, so if you come here, you're going to see list top tracks. This is what we're going to use. So you click on it, it's going to bring you to this code spinner. Now go to the Python and click on request. Let's make sure we have that done. Python and then request. So this is actually what we're going to use. But now let's go back to VS. Okay, not this. Let's go forward. Let's make sure that is good. And we want to go into chart and list top tracks. I want to make sure that is in Python request. Good. So now what we're just going to do is come back in here and let's go into views. So right here, we're just going to do something similar to what we did in this top artist. So just the way we created another function for the top artist, we're going to create another function for the top tracks or the top songs. We're going to do that right now. And then once we are done creating that function, we're going to use that or the response from that in this index. So what I'm just going to do right now is to come here and create a new and just say top tracks. I'm just going to pass for now. So this is what it looks like. I could just go ahead and collapse this. And I'm going to copy this code. This is the code I need. And I'm just going to come in here and paste it. So I actually don't need this to import this. And so right here, what we're just going to do, we're going to do the same thing, something similar. So what I'm going to do is to show you the response. So if I just test this endpoint, this top track endpoint, let's see how the response look like. So we're going to know what to get. So right here, very similar to the top artist, we have the title top songs global. So the weekly songs. So this the description says your weekly update for the most played tracks right now. And these tracks is, as you can see, it gives us top 200 songs again. And the only difference with this is that this is giving us tracks and not just the artist. So what we can do now is to get all of these details. So we kind of already have this. So what we're just going to do is to say right here, we're going to say, after getting a response, we're just going to say data. We're just going to get rid of this. We're going to say data equals to response.json. And then we're going to create a new empty list and say track underscore details. So this track details is just going to be an empty list. And this is where we're going to store all the tracks later. So we just need to first of all make sure that we have the empty list to take care of that. And now what we're just going to do is I'm going to come in here and similar to what we did right here where we check if, so if I come here in this response, we checked if there was tracks. So we're just going to come back in here and say if tracks, this needs to be in quotes, in data. Now what I'm going to do is to kind of get, so what I want to do is I want to get all of the tracks, but I just want to get, let's say, just the first like 18 items. If I come back in here, as you can see, it gives us 200. But if I come here and I scroll down, you're going to see we have just 3 different rows, and each of those has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it just adds 6. So in total, that is 18. So we want to get 18. And what we're just going to do is to shorten this data. So I'm going to say shortened underscore data equals to data tracks. So I'm going to get just the tracks list from the data, and I'm going to shorten it to the first 18, right? So this is what I need. And now that we have shortened it and we have all the tracks, what we can now do is to extract the specific detail. So we can say for track in shortened data. So instead of saying for track in tracks, now we'll just say shortened data, because this shortened data is also the tracks list, but it's the tracks list but it only has the first 18 elements in that tracks list, which is basically what we want. So for track in shortened data, we're going to say track ID. So let's just kind of write down everything we want to get. I'm just going to put it here. We need to get the ID. We need to get the track name. We need to get the artist name, so the owner of that song, and the cover URL. So we need to get the URL of the image of that particular song. I think this is just all we need, and we're going to get that now. So say track underscore ID equals, so if we come in here, so if we come here in each track, let's just open one. So we already have the ID. We can just say track, and we're just going to say square bracket ID. So we just say track square bracket ID. This already gives us the ID. We can do the same for the name, because if you come here, you're going to see that the name is also there. We're just going to say track name. Well, instead of ID, now it's just going to be name. Next thing is the artist name. This is going to be quite different, because if I come here and we come to artist, so this is not just the first, there's like a chain. It's not just the first value. So under each track, right, we have to come to artists, and then under artist we have to get the first element, then we can get the artist name, right? So let's do that. This is the name right here. So what we're just going to do is to say artist. So we're going to say track, but now we're going to say artist, and we're going to get the first element under the artist, and we're going to get the name. So we can do it like this, or we can also use this format. If you come back here, remember we use another format right here where we're like artist.get and this, but I just want to show you another format, so just to increase your knowledge on that. So we can also use this format to get the name and everything. But now what I'm going to do is, so I'm saying get track artist, get the first one, and then get the name, right? So I only want to get this if track artist. So what this is saying is, I want to try to get all of these only if there is artist on that track. If you come back in here, remember under this track there is artist, so it's gonna get it, right? But else, that means if there's no track there's no artist on that track, then the value of this artist name should just be none. I'm gonna do the same thing for the cover URL, cover underscore URL. I'm just gonna say track, but now let's see what we need. I'm just going to actually close this and just open it up again. Open up, but this time, as you can see, instead of artist, it is album. Now under album, we have to go into cover. Under cover, we have to get the first one. Now under the first one, we can get URL. Let's remember album, then cover, then the first one, the first element, then we can get the URL. Let's do that. So we need to get the album, and inside the album, we need to get the cover. And in the cover, we need to get the first element, and then in that first element, we need to get the URL. So this is going to give us, but we also want to say if track. So we only want to do this if track has an element called album, and if album also has something called cover, else none. That should work. Now what we're going to do is to just say track details. So I just want to append all of these track details right here into this track details list. I'm going to say the append, but this time around I want to append it as a dictionary. So if you remember the last time we appended it as a tuple, but now a dictionary. So I'm going to say ID. We can use anyone, to be honest, but I just feel like using this one. So we want to say ID. The ID of that track is going to be track ID, which is this. And then we say name. And then the name of that track is going to be track name. And then the next thing we want to say is the artist. And that's going to be the artist name. Underscore name. So this is a variable. We don't need quotes. And the last one is going to be the cover URL, which is going to be cover URL like this. So now that we have this, what we can just do, save. And now we said if tracks in data, then we want to do all of this. But what if track is not in data? We just want to return something. So we can just say print like track not found in response. So this is just going to help with like debugging if there is an error. So now what we can just do is to return track details. So this should be good. Now what I'm going to do is to come into index, and in index I'm going to call this. So if I just try to copy the name, top tracks, let me collapse this, and in index I'm just going to say top underscore track underscore list equals to top track. I'm going to make sure the top track list is just going to be this top track. And what I'm actually going to do is to print out this top track list just to make sure everything is working. So I've printed that out. Let me bring the terminal back up, scroll down to the latest. And now let me try to refresh this page. And when I refresh this page, if I come back in here as that page is being refreshed, as you can see, it gives us the top track, but it's not that much because remember we shortened the data to only the first 18 elements. So now you can see we have ID, name, artist, and the URL of the cover of that particular song. Good. Now we know we have this. The next thing we want to do, we have to take an approach here. So remember I said this is in chunks of 6. So as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So because of the UI and the way this is done, I think we could just break this data that we have, because it's 18, right? We could break it into 3 parts, and each of those parts will contain 6 elements, and then we could just serve each of this right here. We could do that, or we could tweak the UI to make all of this one, so that, but I'm only doing this because in the UI, like when I try to swipe, you know, when we swipe, I kind of made all of these separate components in itself. Each of these rows, I made them separate components just to take care of that. But I'm pretty sure like we can also just make all of this one component, and we could just loop through it once. But we can do any of that, to be honest. But for now, we're just going to try to split this data into 3 chunks. So what I'm going to do is to say, let me just say divide the list into 3 parts. And I'm going to say first 6 tracks going to be equals to top track list 6. So what this is going to do is that it's going to filter this top track list by only the first 6 elements. I'm going to copy that, but this I'm going to say second 6 tracks, top track list 12. So this is going to filter it to the next 6. I'm going to do the same thing for the third. but now this is going to be 12 to 18. So this is good. And now in context, what I'm just going to do is to pass all of this to the HTML. Like this. I'm just going to copy second, 6 tracks, third, like this. So now that we have all of this, we can come into index.html, and right here in index.html, what we can just do is to scroll down to where we see browse all. We can change this browse all to top songs. Now in each of these, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I could just remove all of this and leave just one, like this. And I could do the same, actually. Control Z back. I'm gonna remove this and this. Okay, good. So this should be good. And I'm gonna remove this too. Okay, this should be good. And this should be like this. Yeah. And I'm just gonna do the same for this also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna remove all of this. I'm gonna do the same for this also. 1, 2, 3. Remove all of this. And now what I'm just gonna do is to say, I'm gonna loop through it. I'm just gonna say for track in, I come into views, first 6 tracks, and 4, and I'm just gonna do the same. And what I'm gonna do is to just select this and also select this. Just copy that, come here, paste that in here. Just gonna make sure this works. So I'm gonna paste that option, paste this in here. Do the same thing. Option. Okay, that's taking more time than it should, so I'm just gonna cut this out and just paste it here like this. Okay, good. So now what I'm just gonna do, instead of first 6, I'm gonna say, let's come here, copy the name, second 6, and for this I'm gonna come here and copy the name and say third 6. Now we're gonna say right here where we have image, I'm gonna say track dot. Remember, if we come here, we come into this list. So we're gonna come here. In each of these, we have cover URL. So that is the image, the track.cover URL, and alt. For the alt, I'm just gonna give it the track name. So track the name. So let's make sure that is it. So name artist. I'm gonna write here the name, and what we're just gonna do is to do the same thing. I'm just gonna copy this, paste that in here, paste that in here also. I'm gonna do the same thing for this, paste that in, paste that in. I'm gonna copy this cover URL, paste that in, and paste that and replace this right here. So now we've successfully done this, and as you can see, we have the track name showing, we should have the URL and stuff. Now let's just try this out. I come back in here and hit refresh. Let's see what happens when everything loads successfully. Good. As you can see, we have the songs Greedy, Loving on Me, Cruel Summer. So we have all the songs right here. If I swipe, you can see it filters it to just 6 songs. We have everything right here that we really need, which is good. So now, as you can see, we are making a lot of progress in this, and it's working. So what we just need to do now is when a user actually click on one of these songs, we want to take them to a separate page, so like a separate music page where they can actually play this song. And that's the main part of this whole thing. So let's just make sure we can do that. But before we even get to that, just the way we allowed this to be clickable, let's also allow each of these song cards to be clickable. I'm going to come back in here, and right here where we have category, so this category card div, I'm just going to have an A tag, and I'm also going to end it right here. Gonna tab and this, and I'm just gonna, for now, say f should be like hashtag. Once again, I'm gonna use the same styling. I'm gonna say style text decoration should be none, just to make sure we don't have no underlines or anything. I'm gonna hit refresh and let's see how that looks. Okay, good. There's no text decoration, but as you can see, if I click on it, it's bringing me back to this page, which is good. But you can see there's colors. We don't want no colors, right? Let's just change it back to white. We could just say color should really be white. Okay, not this. White like this. Now let's hit refresh and see how that is looking. Good. Now we can click on this. It should be working. If I scroll up and click on this, it takes me back to this page. Good. But this only works for the first 6, so let's do the same for the rest. I'm just gonna come here, put this right here, put this here, and then indent. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing for the last one. Cut this out, put this here, tab, tab. Now this should work. If I come back in here and hit refresh, everything should be fine. Should be working as planned. So let's just hit refresh. Good. So as you can see, if I click on any of it, it brings me back to this page. Now the next thing we're going to do is when we click on any of this music, it's going to take us to actually listen to this music. Now we're going to do that next. Now the next thing we're going to do is to allow a user to click on a music and actually listen to that music. So what we need to do is to come back into our code, and we're going to go into URLs. So right here in URLs, we need to create a new URL. I'm just going to copy paste, and this URL is going to be music. And we're just going to say views.music, and the name should be music. The only different thing about this URL is we're going to use a dynamic URL. So we're going to have something like, if I come back in here, so when the user clicks on this, we want to have something that says /music, but then we want to say / the ID of that song, right? And the ID of every single song will be different. So what we're going to use to represent the ID of that song in here is going to be this. So what this is saying is that we can go to music / and then whatever is going to be here is going to be have to be a string, and it's going to be stored in a variable called pk. That is basically what that is saying. Now we're going to come back into views. I'm just going to bring that down a little bit and then bring this down a little bit. And right here, I'm just going to have so I'm just going to come here and I'm going to create music. I'm going to take a request. But now remember that we have this pk right here. So it's also going to take this pk, and then we're just going to return render request, and then if we open up the files, we're going to see that it is music.html. Just close this and just say music.html. I could save this. Now if I come and let's say I say just click on this, okay, it says, as you can see, okay, right now because we didn't, so if I just refresh this should work. So okay, we didn't save this. If I come back here, you're gonna see that URLs is not saved. But now that it's saved, if I hit refresh, you can now see that we have this page, even if it doesn't really look nice right now, but this page is working. So what we just need to do is to come back in here, go into music, and the reason why the styling is not working is because we are connecting it to the styles.css file, which is basically this file right here, style.css, but we're not adding the format. So first of all, we need to come here and load static. And for us to add this, I'm just going to say Command Shift P and run auto Django, which is this. And as you can see, automatically it has added or updated that for us. So that is what we need. And what I'm just going to do, you can also do that manually if you don't have auto Django installed. But if you want to fasten that process, just come to extensions and install auto Django. So now that we have that, we can save. And if I come back in here, I'm just going to come back in here and hit refresh. You can now see that we have this good looking UI, which is good. This is what we need. So now the next thing I'm going to do, if I come back and go to home, now once a user clicks on any of this, we want to take the user to that page. But how do we do this? So I'm going to come back to index, but right here in index, what I'm going to do is where we have this particular a tag, so where we have this link, we're just going to say /music. But then remember that in this first 6 tracks, if I come back into views, I'm just going to close this up, open up index. So in this track, and this was from top track, so I'm going to open up top track. Remember that we have ID. So what I can just do is to come in here and say slash. I'm just going to copy all of this and say /track.id. I'm going to copy this and paste it in the other places. I'm going to do the same here and then do the same here. So I could just log in, come back here, collapse this, come back to music. Now if I come back in here and hit refresh, if I click on any one of this, you're going to see what it does. So I'm going to click on this song. Even if it doesn't show that song right now, but you can see right here that it goes to music / the ID of that song. Note this ID. If I come here and I click on just any other song, you're going to see that the ID is different. Now we're going to use this unique ID to get the details of that particular song. So the song name, the artist, the duration, the actual song we want to play, and also the song art. So we're going to do that in a bit. So what we just want to do, also in this music, I just want to come here and where we have, I'm just going to come in here and just want to add a BR, hit refresh. Let's just add more, hit refresh. So I'm just trying to bring this image down. What we can just do to add it here, just right before the image, and that should come down. And let's increase this back, just so it's gonna be bigger. And I'm just gonna cancel this actually. And what I'm just gonna do is paste this like 6 times, just so it could fit the screen. There's probably also a better way to do this, but let's just have this as a, okay, good. Let me just remove like 2 of this, and that should be fine. Okay, good. So this is what we have. This should become. Now what we're going to do is to get the song details. We need to get all of the details, right? I'm going to come back in here and come into views. And what I'm going to do is in music, let's actually first come to the API and see how we're going to do this. So let's first start by getting the details of that song. So now that we have the ID, we're going to close this chart. If I come into track and I click on get track metadata, so I'm going to use this endpoint. If I look at results, no, actually let me test this particular one. So if we input an ID of a track and we test the endpoint, this is how the result is going to look like. So it's going to give you the duration of that particular song, is going to give you the name, it's going to tell you it's a track, it's going to give you all the details. And from this, we're going to get some of these details, right? The only thing it doesn't give you is the actual playback, which means the actual link to play that song, right? We're also going to take care of this later, but that's the only thing this track metadata doesn't give you. So we're kind of going to do that ourselves later. So now what I'm just going to do is to click on this code spinner and copy this. I'm going to come back in here and paste it in music. Just going to add indentations and remove this. So now what we just did was, first of all, let me just say track underscore id equals pk. So I'm just storing this pk, which is a track id, into a variable named track id, just for better code readability. So now what I just did was to use that endpoint to get the metadata, and from this metadata, what I'm going to do, so right here we have the URL, and then we have this query string. So this query string, instead of just having this particular track ID, I'm going to have my track ID instead, which is this track ID, also known as the ID from this link right here. So that is what we have. And now what I'm just going to do, where we have this response, and remember we also have response.json. So what I'm going to do is, instead of printing this, I'm going to get rid of this, and right here I'm just going to say if I first want to check if this response was successful. So I'm going to say if response the status code is equals to 200 and data should be equals to response.json, right? Then I'm storing it in a variable called data. Now I can extract the information we need. So once again, let's write down the information we want to extract. We want to extract the track name. We want to extract the artist name. And that's basically what we want to extract. Track name and artist name. So I'm just going to say extract. I'm going to comment that out. Now, how do we do this? So to get the track name, we come back into results. Let's just collapse all. And in this result, we can just say track.name, and we're basically just going to get that particular track name. I'm going to say track name equals to data, which is this dot get name. It's that easy. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to just get the artist name. So the artist name is not shown here. If you come here, you're going to see that the artist name is part of a list. So first we need to get this artist list. So what I'm just going to do is to say artist underscore list will be equals to data dot get artist. And if we are not able to get this, let's just return a blank list. So now that we've gotten this artist list, we now have to get the artist name. So this artist could be multiple. So the way this API works is that if 3 different artists sing a song, it's gonna kind of like put all of them into this list. But for this particular song, it's just one artist that sang this song. That's why there's just one element in the list. But if it's multiple, it's gonna be like multiple elements. But for now, we're just keeping this application simple. We're just gonna get only the first artist, which is the main artist or the owner of that song, right? And that is the first artist name. So what we're gonna do is to just say first artist name gonna be equals to artist list. So from artist list, let's see what we're trying to get. Under artist list, we want to get the first element, and then we want to get the name. So we're just gonna say artist list, the first element dot get name. Now we're gonna have a condition. We only want to get this if artist list, else say no artist found. Right? So we only want to get this if this artist list is true. So if we're able to see or get a response or a list from a list called artist from the data, then we want to do all of this. So now that we have this artist name there, what we can just do now is to create a context. So this is a new dictionary called context, and I'm just gonna say track name. Just copy the name and let's give it track name value. And the next one is just going to be the artist name. We're just going to say first artist name, right? And then we're going to pass this dictionary into our music.html. Now this is part of what we need. We're not done yet, but we've gotten started. So now we can use this to information in our music.html. Let's just use this to make sure, try this out to make sure that everything we're doing is working. So now what we can just do is right here where we have song name, and just say track name, right, which is what we have right here. And for the artist or the owner of the song, where we have artist name, and just say artist name. Now let's try this out. Let's come here. I'm gonna go back, right? I'm gonna click on this Greedy Song by Tate McRae, and as you can see, it says the name of the song and it says the artist that sang that song. Let's try it for another one. Let's say this should be by Jack Arlo, right? So it says the name and it says the owner of the song. So that is good, but the only thing is that is just the basic information. We still need to get the actual song. We need to play the actual song. We still need to get the image of the song, right? So we still need to do all of that. And we also still need to get the duration so that this is not just going to be, just this 4 minutes for every single song. And we also need to use some JavaScript to kind of track the song as we're playing it. So as we're playing it, we need this to be moving. And when a user click back, we want the song to go back by 10 seconds. When a user click on the forward button, we want the song to go forward by 10 seconds. We're also going to do all of that in this video. So I'm just going to come back in here. Now that we've successfully been able to get the artist name and track name, let's come back, and then I think the next thing that we should try to do is to get or play the music, to actually play the music. So what we're going to do is to use, so I'm going to come here and show you the endpoint we're going to use. So you see this download track on YouTube, this is what we're going to use. So this is very good because all it just needs is that we just need to input the name of the song and the owner of the song, the person that sang the song. And if we come into results and we come into, okay, so let's just test this particular endpoint. So this Lego House by Ed Sheeran, and let's see the result. So if you come under YouTube video and you come under audio and just click on anyone, to be honest, it's going to give you the URL to actually play that song, which is very good. So if I just come here, if I copy this, let's say I open it up, I'm going to quit this, but I quit immediately because if I play it, it's actually going to play out that song, and I could get copyrighted by YouTube. But as you can see, that actually gave me a link to play the URL, to play the audio of that particular song. So this is the endpoint we're going to use to get the audio, and we could also use this to get the duration, which is what we have here. So let's just do that right now. I'm going to come back in here, right? But for this, I'll say we should create a new function. So instead of having it in this same music function, let's create an external function for this, just so our code is not messy. So I'm going to come up here. So right here where we have top tracks, I'm just going to create another function and say, let me say something like get underscore audio underscore details. And it's going to take a query. Now this query is going to be the name of the song and the artist of that song. So the owner of that song. Let me just collapse this. So now what I'm just going to do is to come in here and copy this. I'm going to copy this Python code and paste it in this particular function. So I need to give that indentations. Good. Now the only thing I just need to change is to actually change the query. So right here where you see query string, the query is going to be this query that we are getting as this parameter that is being passed into the function. So now the next thing we want to do is to remove this print response because we do not need it. So now we're just going to make an audio. We're going to say audio details equals square bracket. So this square bracket, this audio details, what it's doing is just that it is where we're going to store all the details of that audio later when we're done getting all the details. So the details we need is just the audio URL, so we can actually listen to the song, and the duration of that particular song. So now what we're just going to do is to say if response dot status code is equals to 200, then we can say response underscore data equals to response dot JSON. And now once we have the response data, the first thing I want to do is to extract the first URL from the audio list. So if I come in here, as you can see in the result, I'm just gonna close everything. So in the result, if you open YouTube video and you open audio and you open the first one, you see URL. So that is how we're going to get the URL. So what I'm just going to do is to go under YouTube video and then order audio. So I'm just going to come here and say if YouTube video in response data and audio in YouTube video, audio in response data YouTube video. So what this is just saying is if this is basically present and this audio is there, then what we can do is to say audio list. Just bring this up a little bit. It'd be equals to response data. Then now we want to get the audio list. So YouTube video. And then under YouTube video, we just want to get audio. And now, since we have this, what we can just do to say if audio list, so that means if this is true. So we're just kind of checking this twice just to make sure there's no problems and it will be easier to debug if there is a problem. So if audio list, I'm just going to say first audio URL. You can use any one, the first one, the second one, because all the same thing. So I'm just going to say audio list. Let me just make sure you understand what I'm doing. So this audio list is basically all of this list right here, but then I'm getting the first one right now, right? And under the first one, I'm going to get the URL. So now I'm going to say audio list. I'm going to get the first one, and under it, I'm going to get the URL. That is how I'm going to get the URL. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the duration text. So under there, if I scroll down, you're going to see we have duration text. And I'm just going to say duration underscore text, right? And I'm just going to come here and say duration, just to make sure we're writing it correctly. Scroll back, duration cap T, so duration capital letter T and ext. So that is duration text. But now we're going to append these two values onto this audio list. So I'm just going to copy that name, and I'm going to say audio list dot append first audio URL, and I'm going to also append duration text. So now that we have that appended, so if audio list, but if this is not true, that means if we can't find audio list, then we can just print no audio data available. And let's also have another else statement for this, and we can print no YouTube video or audio key found, right? So that is if this is not found, we're going to print this. And else, so if let's have another else for this. and this time around it's for if the response status code is not 200, then we're just going to say print failed to fetch data, like this. Now this should be good, and what we just need to do is to return this audio list. I'm just going to say return audio list. I'm sorry, audio details. Now if we call this particular function and we give it the correct or the right query, it should return the details we need. So we're going to do that now in this music function. So right here in the music function, so the name of that is get audio details. And what we're just going to do is to actually get those details. So I'm going to come here. So right under first artist name, I'm just going to say audio underscore details underscore query. So what I'm just doing now is to first come up with the query before I can try to call that particular function. And remember, the query is, if we come back here, the query is the name of the song followed by the name of the artist. So we're just going to say track name, which is name of the song, followed by artist, so which is first artist name. So this is the correct query, and now we can get the actual details, audio details. So we can now get the actual details by saying audio details equals get audio details. But now for the query, we're going to have to use this query. We're just going to paste this in, and now that we have this audio details, we can then get the audio URL. We're going to say audio underscore URL underscore URL equals to audio details. We're going to get, so if we remember correctly, the first thing we appended was the URL. So we first appended, we come back in here, we appended the URL, then the duration text. So the URL going to be the first, and then the duration text going to be the second one right here. Now what we're just going to do is to add that right here in the context dictionary. So we're just going to say audio URL, give it the value audio URL, and then duration text, and then we're just going to give it the value duration text like this. So this is good. This is actually what we need. This is what we want. Now the next thing that we're going to do is to just kind of show this in the page. So I'm going to come back to music, and the first thing I'm going to change is the duration text. I'm just going to change this to the actual duration text. So if I come back to views and copy that duration text, I can update it with this. If I save it and come back in here, and let's say I click on one of this, let's see what that does, or the update that changed to the music page. So as you can see, now it's saying the actual duration text of that song. If I scroll back and I click on this, it should also say the same thing, and as you can see, the duration text. But now what we want to do is to actually now play the music. Now this is where we have to use a little bit of JavaScript. I'm going to come into music.html, and right here I'm just going to go straight forward by creating a div tag, sorry, a script tag. So I'm just going to say script like this. Now I'm just going to kind of paste in some block of code, but I'm going to be explaining all of this code. So what I'm just going to do is right here, I'm going to paste this in. So what this is doing is that we are getting access to all of these elements and storing that access. Think of it kind of like in a variable, right? So audio player, now if we come here, we are going to have, we are getting with the element of ID, right? And we need to have, I come in here where we need to have a div tag, or we need to have a tag that has an ID of audio player, and that is going to be stored as basically the audio player, right? And the next one we want to do is talk about is the pause button. So if you come in here where we actually have this, so you can see so for this play pause button, it says get element by ID play pause. If you come in here, you're going to see that we have the ID play pause, and the same for the progress bar. You can see that the ID is progress bar, and for the actual progress, you can see that the ID is progress. And for the current time element, so we need to access this so we can be updating the time as the user is listening to the song. Current time, and then total duration. Now we are able to get this. The next thing is we want to update the duration text. So what we can do is to update the duration text with this duration text that we got from here, but we already done that, so we actually don't need access to this, but we could just leave it there because we might later, we don't know yet. But we already updated it right here. We already have the duration text shown, so we don't really need to write anything to update the duration text. But the next thing we want to do is to, first of all, play the song, right? So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna come here, and right here where we have audio source URL. So this audio, now if I show you this audio ID right here, so this is the audio player right here that we're trying to get. This is the audio tag. Now instead of this just playing some run whatever this is, so what we want it to play is, I come here, I want it to play the audio URL. So remember this audio URL that we got here, that is what I want you to play, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm first going to add, before we actually play the song, what I'm going to do is to add a block of code that takes care of the user being able to play and pause the track. So this is the main thing we need. So right here you can see play pause button. We're adding an event listener. So this play pause button is basically this button right here. This button. I come in here, it is this button. So once the user click on it, if the play is paused, right? If audio.paused, then we're going to say audio player.play, right? That's what we're going to do. And then if we're now playing it, we want to change the inner HTML of that play button to this. Now this, what it's going to do is that it's going to change this from play to pause. So it's going to have like the pause button, else that means it's already playing, then we just want to pause it and change it back to the play button. Now that is what this does. And the next thing we need to take care of is actually updating the bar as the audio is being played. So as the audio is being played, we want this bar to be moving till the end. So what we're just going to do, paste in this block of code once again. I'm just going to show you everything so you can be able to see what we're doing. So that is the old code, and we're saying audio player.add event listener. So we're also sticking with, if I come here, this audio player, but now we're saying add event listener time update. So what we're saying is, as the time update, so every single change of that time, then we are creating a new variable and calling it progress percentage. And what we're just doing is we're saying audio player.current time, we're dividing it by the total duration, and then we're multiplying it by 100. So we can use that to get a percentage of how much of the song has been played already, right? And this is just how we get that percentage. Then we can go into that particular progress. Remember when we got this progress right here, which is basically this actual progress. If I come in here to show you, it is this green line that you see here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to update. So we're saying progress.style.width. We're going to update the width with the progress percentage, which is this. Now I'm going to show you something in the styling. So this uses the style.css. What I'm going to do is to open up style.css and show you. I'm just going to search for progress. So this is the progress bar, but this is actual progress. So this progress.width, remember right here, that is what is being updated. Progress, if you come in here, progress.style.width. So that is it right here, progress.width. Right now is at 1%. That is why you can only see just 1% of it. But what we want to do, I could close this. What we want to do now is that as the song is being played and the percentage of the song that has been played is being calculated, we want to keep updating the width of that particular progress bar so it can keep moving until the end of the song. Now that is what that does. And the next thing we just want to do is to just update the time. So instead of just having 00 right here, what we're just going to do is to create a new variable called current minute, and then we're just going to use the math, and then we're going to say math.floor, and we're going to say audio player the current time. We're getting the current time, but this current time is going to come to us in seconds. No, not in seconds. It's going to come to us in hours. So but what we're going to do is to divide it by 60. So if we divide it by 60, it's going to give us the minute. If I'm correct, that should be what it is. No, actually it's not going to come to us in hours. It's going to come to us in seconds. I just realized because whenever we're using the current time in an audio tag, so if we have an audio tag right here and then we use current time in JavaScript, this current time returns it as seconds. So then we divide that seconds by 60 to get the time in minutes. Now we can store that minute in this current minute, and we can also use that to get the current second. So we are saying to get the current second, we have to say audio player the current time minus current minute. We first have to subtract from the amount of minutes already played, then multiply it by 60. That gets the second. And now we can just update the context, the text content, which is this particular one right here, where we have current time. We can update that by this format, using this format right here. Now that we've done that, the next thing is, so you're going to add like a seek functionality. So what I mean by seek functionality is, let's say I'm playing this song and I want to skip to like this part. So when I click on this part, I want the song to skip to that part. Or when I click on this part, it should skip to that part. If I click back, it should skip back. That's what I mean by seek functionality. And this is the block of code that does that. So we're also getting the progress bar, but we're adding an event listener. This time around, a click event listener on that progress bar. So we are getting the progress bar width by saying progress bar the client width, and click x equals e.offset x. So we're basically getting where the user is clicking, and then we are getting the width of that particular part, and then we're just saying duration equals audio player dot duration, right? That's what we're just getting, the current duration. And then we're saying audio player dot current time. We are setting the current time, we're updating it with click x, which is where the user clicked, divided by the progress width bar, right, times duration. So that gives us the time, the actual time we want to jump into. So that is done. The next two things we want to do is to just write the code that moves or skips the song forward. So if I click on this, I want this to move forward by 10 seconds every time. So for us to do that, we're going to bring this code in. Just going to show you the old code right here. I'm going to get rid of this. So this code moves forward by 10 seconds when the user clicks on the button. So what we're doing is we're getting element by ID next. So if I come in here, so you can see this button, this is the next button. It has an ID called next. The previous button has an ID called previous. We're using that to get those buttons, and we're adding an event listener. So click event listener, and what we're just saying is once it is clicked, we want to update the audio player current time, and what we want to do is to update it by 10 seconds. For this, if the previous button is clicked, we want to update it by moving it back by 10 seconds. Now I'm saving this. Just gonna Control Z. I'm saving this, and everything should now be working perfectly because this should be the script for everything. Now what I'm just gonna do is to come back in here, and I'm gonna hit on refresh, right? And now this is gonna load everything up for me. It's gonna load the song, is gonna load everything. Now in here, if I just gonna make sure that this is muted just because of YouTube copyright. but this is gonna be working. So I'm just gonna play this song, and you should see, as you can see, the time is being updated and the progress bar is moving. So if I unmute it, you're gonna hear the song, but I'm not gonna do that because of YouTube copyright. But when you try it, this should work. I'm gonna try these buttons. If I go back, as you can see, it went back 10 seconds. If I go forward, as you can see, it went forward 10 seconds. And I could go to anywhere on the old progress bar and it's just gonna update for me. As you can see, everything is being updated alongside with the music. So we've successfully added the feature that allows the user to listen to music. This is probably the most important feature. And the next thing is to just show the music image. So right here it's just showing the same image for every single song. So we're going to update that to make sure that the image is the image of that particular song. Now what we're going to do is to update this image. If I open any song, every song is just going to have this image right here, but we don't want that. So what we want to do is to be able to update that image to the actual image of that song. So to do this, we're going to use a concept called web scraping. I'm going to come back in here into views. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a whole new function to get this. And let me explain what I'm going to do. So if I come here, I just opened my browser and I opened an incognito tab and I opened a song on Spotify. So I'm going to open up developer tools. So you come here by going to more tools and open up developer tools. I'm just going to drag this all the way here. And as you can see, this is the image of the song. What we need to do is to get the link or the URL of that song. So I'm going to click on this and then click on that URL. So if I come here, you're going to see that on this page, this is the tag that contains that particular image URL. What we need to do is to get this URL. That is literally all we need to do. And we need to know that it's inside the image tag with the image tag that has an attribute named alt, and that alt just has the title of that particular song, right? So that's all we need to know, and then we will just get this particular image from here. So I'm going to show you how to do that using web scraping. Once again, you can use plenty ways. There's probably an API that can do this. You can also use an API, but this is just another way of doing it, and you can also learn web scraping using this method. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to come back in here, and as I said, I'm going to create a new function. I'm just going to come here and I'm going to say dev get track image. Now what I need is just the track ID and the track name. For now, I'm just going to pass. Let me just collapse this. And now what I'm going to do, as I said, is called web scraping. So the first thing I need to do is to make sure that I have two things imported. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to import. So I already have request imported, but I'm going to import Beautiful Soup. So Beautiful Soup is a Python library that is used for web scraping. I'm going to say from BS4 import Beautiful Soup as BS. So we don't need to keep typing Beautiful Soup all the time. I'm also going to use regex. So I'm going to say import re. Let me just remove this because I'm going to use regex later and you're going to see why. And if I come back in here, I'm going to come here. Now we're going to use web scraping that I talked about. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come to this place and copy this link. So this is the link to access, I'm just going to say URL. This is the link to access the Spotify track page of every song, as long as you have the ID. So what I'm just going to do is to remove this ID and just append the ID that we're getting from here, of the argument that is being passed in. So that is the URL. And for me to web scrape, I'm going to say R equals, I'm going to send a request dot get. I'm going to send a get request to that URL. It's kind of like sending a request to an API endpoint, right? Well, this is going to be requests. And I'm going to say soup equals to BS R, which is this, the content. So what this soup does is that it allows us to edit or get data from the HTML content of that particular page. So once we have that, what you can now do is to get the HTML content for the image. So what we need to do is to know, so let me first say image links HTML equals to, so we're going to say soup, which is this, dot find. So we already know we're looking for an image tag, but what attribute does it have that is going to allow Beautiful Soup to be able to look for that image tag easier? So if I come back in here, remember what we said in this image tag right here, it has an alt, and the value of that alt is the name of that song or the title. If I come here, you can see that this is the title and that is the value of that alt. We can use it to get the specific URL. I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to say alt, and that alt is going to be track name because that is the value. So once we have this now, we're going to, this basically gives us the whole HTML tag. So I'm going to say if image links HTML, right? So that means if we're able to get this, then let's see what we want to do. What do we want? Do we want this? So we could get this SRC, but the problem with this SRC is that the quality of the image is quite bad. So as you can see, it's just 128 to 128 pixels. That's the rendered size. But if you come into SRC set, so it gives you a list of all the source or the URLs of this image, but it gives you different sizes, right? So this is what we want. That's why I'm going to get SRC set. Then from this SRC set, we're going to get the biggest size. From there, then we can render it however we want. You can also just directly get this SRC from here and just display it. That is going to be easier, but it's just that the image quality is going to be quite low. So we're going to get SRC set instead of just getting SRC. So right here, I'm just going to come in here, and what I'm going to do is to say image links, because that SRC set is a bunch of links. It's going to be image links HTML, and in it I'm going to get SRC set, right? Now else, that means if we're not able to get image links HTML, then I'm just going to say image links. Let me just leave it blank. But now, as I said, the value of this now is basically, let me just come back to where we were right here. So the value of this is basically all of this. So if I click on this and then I click on SRC set, you can see we have a bunch of links. So we have this link and it says 150W. We have this link, it says 300W, comma, we have this link 320 all the way to 640. So that is the value that is basically stored in this variable now. But what I want to do is to use regex to just get the biggest size. And the biggest size is the link right beside 640W. That is the best quality. So I'm just going to use regex to filter that out. And what I'm just going to do is to actually just bring in that regex code. I'm going to use regular expressions right now. I'm going to say match is equals to array.search. It's going to search for HTTP. This is basically the format for getting that URL, and it's going to search for the one beside 640W because that is the best quality. I'm going to search for it from image links, which is the SRC set. Now if the match is found, then I'm just gonna say URL 640W. Let me just name it this, and that is the highest quality. So I'm gonna say match.group, but I'm gonna have to remove this 640W because I only want the link. I'm just gonna say match.group.rstrip. Just gonna say 640W. So this is just gonna remove the 640W part for us. Or else, if there is no match, then we're just gonna say this should be blank. And now we can just return this. So this should work. Everything should be fine. And let's just try this out. So now let's say we're trying to run this. Just gonna copy this, get track image, close this, come into music, So right here in music, we're going to have to get the track image. So right before context, I'm just going to come here. I'm going to say track image underscore image should be equals to get track image, but we're going to have to give it a track ID, and this track ID should be this track ID right here that was already passed into music. So that is this track ID, and then the track name is just going to be this track name right here that we already got. So now that we have those two, what we can just do is to get the track image, and now I can just do this, right? And once we have the track image, I can now go into, so what I'm just going to do is to come here and go into music, and right here in music where we have this particular cover, so this music cover, I'm just gonna input save. So this is just what I'm doing right here, and I'm just gonna come back in here. So as you can see, everything worked perfectly, and you can see that it gives us the image. So we can reduce the size of this image just to make it look better. Well, I think that is fine. So this is very good because this works, and if we play the song also plays, everything works perfectly fine. So this our music page is working fine. Now I'm just in the home page, and what we want to do now is to create artist profile page for every single artist on this platform. So when a user clicks on this artist, we want to take them to the profile page of that artist. So they are going to be able to see the monthly listeners of that artist, see all the songs, their top singles, and any other information that is necessary. So for us to do this, we need to come back to the code, and in URLs, we're going to have to create a profile URL, and this profile URL is just going to be profile right here. It's also going to take an ID because we need to have the ID of the particular artist that we are creating for. And right here, we just say views.profile and name profile. Now let's go straight to views quickly. And right here, let me just get it right. Yeah. I'm just going to have a div and say profile, and it's going to take a request and PK. And then we're just going to say, let me just copy this, return render profile .html. I'm going to get rid of this for now. And we need to have this. So now let's try to go to profile. I'm just going to try to go to /profile /random ID. And as you can see, it gives us this. What we need to do is to come here and open up profile.html, and we just need to put the style here, so we can either write it manually, or first of all we need to add load static. So we need to also add static here. We can do that manually or use the extension called auto Django. So I just clicked on Command Shift P and it automatically added that static tags for me. Now I could save this, and if I come back, not here, if I come back here and hit refresh, as you can see, we have this demo page working. Now what we want to do is we need to get the artist for that particular artist that the user is trying to see. We need to get the name, the image, we need to get the monthly listeners, and then we need to get their top songs. So what I'm just going to do now is to add back to views. So I'm just going to remove this and get rid of this. So now in views, we are going to have to use the same API. So before we come into views, I'm just going to come back here and come back to this API. This time around, we're going to be using the artist API, and we're going to click on get artist overview. So this is the endpoints that we're going to be using, and this is just going to take the ID of the artist, that is the required parameter. Now let's just test endpoint and see how the result is going to come out. So as you can see, it gives us the name of the artist, The URL, we don't really need this. The biography, we also don't really need that. I'm gonna scroll down past the biography. It gives us all the other details we need. Visuals, just such as the avatar, the header. It gives us discography, where we can see their singles and also like their top tracks. It gives us all of that details. So we have all of these details right here, and we can use this in our code. I'm just gonna collapse this, and what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna come back in here and copy this code spinet, and right here in profile, I'm just gonna say artist underscore ID equals PK. Now what I'm gonna do is to just paste all of that code I copied. I'm gonna get rid of this request. Now this should be good. But now for this query string, instead of having this ID, I'm just gonna replace it with the artist ID. So now that we have this, we have the replacement and we have this response. I'm just gonna get rid of this. Now we just want to get all of the details from that response. So once again, we're just gonna say if response dot status code is equals to 200. Then we want to say data equals response dot JSON. And now we want to extract the relevant information. So the name of the artist, we need to get the name. We're just going to say data. We come back in here and click on results. So you can see that we can just access the name directly instantly. So we can just say data name. So now we have the name of the particular artist. Now we need the monthly listeners. So I'm just going to say monthly underscore listeners. So this is the monthly listeners equals to data. So under data, we come here and go all the way to the bottom. We go under stats, we're going to see monthly listeners. So we'll just go back there. We're just going to go under stats. And under there, we're just going to say monthly listeners. Now the next thing is the header URL. So like if we come back in here, this particular image, so we need to get the URL for that image. If we come back to, okay, we need to test this endpoint again. And this is in track, it needs to be in artist, and get artist overview. Let's make sure we change it to request, and let's test that endpoint. So now we need to get the header URL, and the header URL, if we come down, we're going to see that it is in visuals and it is in header, and it is the first element in header. So visuals, then header, then the first element, then we can get the URL. So let's do that. So we're going to say header URL will be equals to data. I'm going to get visuals, and then we're going to get header, and then we're going to get the first element, and then we're going to get the URL. Now we've successfully gotten the name, the monthly listeners, the header, which is what we need, right? Now what we want to do is to get, well, let me just come here and just say artist data. And I'm just, instead of saying context or typing context as the name of the dictionary, I'm just going to say artist data. And now we can just input the name of the artist. We can input the monthly listeners. I'm just going to say monthly listeners. And the header URL, same thing, header URL. And now I can pass this artist data in here. But one thing we need to know is that this will give us an error, because we are saying if response is 200, then we are creating artist data. But what if it's not? What if it's something else? Then we want to say artist data should be equals to a blank dictionary, and this should not give us any error. If I come back in here now and hit this, refresh on this, let's see. Okay, so this is not going to work because this has an ID that doesn't work. So one thing we need to do, I'm just going to go back. One thing we actually need to do is to make sure that once a user click on one of these artists, it takes them to the profile of that artist. To do this, we have to come back to index. And remember in index where we had this artist and then we had this a tag. Now we're going to say /profile / artist .2. Pretty sure .2 is the ID, so let's try it. Let's hit refresh. So let's just make sure. Okay, cool. Now let's see. Now if I hit Taylor Swift, okay, so that still, okay, that gives us the ID, but that doesn't give us the data. Let me hit Drake. So if we come back to views, oh, okay, so we have successfully passed this data into profile.html, but we haven't actually displayed the data there. So what we need to do is to now come here, and where we have the name, in this case the name is Rema, it should be just name. So I'm going to change that to name. And for the monthly listeners, I'm just going to get the name of the key, and I'm just going to also use that in here, monthly listeners. And what else do we have? The header URL, an important one too. I'm just going to come here where we have this image, and I'm just going to say header URL, and for the alt, I'm just going to say name. Now let's try this out again and see. And let me just say Taylor Swift, and then let's see what happens. So good, as you can see, we have Taylor Swift, we have the monthly listeners, and then we have the header, which is good. Now the next thing is to just take care of all the songs. So we want all the songs to show, and for us to do that, we're going to come back in here. So remember that in this API we add something called discography, and right here in discography we add top tracks. So we're just going to take these top tracks and basically display it on their profile. Now let's do that. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to come back into views, and right here, before anything, I'm just going to create a new empty list called top tracks, and now I'm going to have to iterate through these top tracks under discography. Now let's do that. So I'm going to say for track in data discography, and then under a top tracks, right? So for this, then we can get the track ID, which is what we need. We're just going to say track. Let's see how the ID is being got. So under track, top tracks, come here, and then you can just say track.id, right? I'm just going to say track. I'm just going to get the ID, and I'm going to do the same for the name. I'm just going to say track name. It will be equals to track. I'm pretty sure is also name. Let's cross check. So name. So now we have the track ID and track name. And let's just convert this into strings. So just to be safe, because we don't know what data type is being returned as. Good. So now we have this, and the next thing we want to get is the track image. So track image. So to get the track image, remember we created a function for that. So get track image, we need to give it the track ID and the track name. So we're going to come back here and we're going to say get track image, and then we're just going to give it the track ID, and that track ID is going to be this right here, and then we also need to give it the track name, which is basically this. So now it should get the image once it has these two details. Now once we get that, before we move forward, let's do like a little trick, because sometimes it might not get image successfully. Maybe there's a problem, or the artist didn't upload the image, or something just didn't work, right? So when that happens, what we want to do is to just give it like a default image, right? Remember, prior we had like a default image on every single one. So what we want to do is to give it like a default image for the ones that don't have image, or the ones that are not successful in getting image. So to do that, what we're just going to do is to say, if I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to say if get track. So if you run this and you get a response, then good, then set the track image to be that. Else, if you don't get a response, then set the track image to be equals to, so this track image, now I'm just gonna give a link to like a default image to be equals to this link. If I open this link on here, you're gonna see that it's just this image, right? So that is what we want to do, to be that link. And now we can just store. So right here, we can just create track info. I'm just going to create a new dictionary. And now we need to store the necessary information in a dictionary. I'm just going to say track info. Now the ID of that track should be track. And so the reason why I converted this to string was just because I was concatenating it right here. So remember, when we pass it into this get image track image, it's going to concatenate it. That's why it was turned into string. But now for the track ID, we could just take this and just say track ID directly. And for the name, we could do the same thing, just copy the track name and just say track name. And the next thing is, so what we just want is the duration text. So that we can show that right here. So we need the duration text so we can show it here. So to get the duration text, we come into a track. You're going to see that we have duration text. So the duration text, and we're just going to say track duration text. And we also want to know the play count, so the amount of times this song has been streamed. So as you can see, we have something in play count. Just going to add that play count, and then we're just going to say track play count. And now for the last thing, which is the image, just going to say track underscore image. Just going to say track image. Now we can pass this track info into the dictionary artist data. So we're just going to say right here, I'm just going to say, actually we don't want to pass this directly. So remember, we had this top tracks list, then we could append. So because right here, remember, we're still under a for loop, and this track info actually should be under this for loop, because for all of this is what we want to do. Then we're going to append each of that to this top tracks list. So append track info. Now we can come here and add top tracks. Let's just say top tracks. Good. Now this should work perfectly fine. And what I'm just going to do is to basically test this out. We need to come back into profile. And now in profile, we're going to do a little bit of rendering. So we need to show all of this information. So once again, this is top tracks. So I'm just going to copy that name specifically. I'm going to come back to profile. And right here where we have the songs, so this single track row, right below single track row, I'm just going to say for track in stop tracks, and I'm going to end it. I do this right before repeat other choices, and I'm just going to say end 4 right here, and it's going to give me the list of all of that. But now what I'm just going to do is to say, instead of this image, I'm going to say track dot track underscore image, just to be sure. It is right here, track underscore image. I'm going to copy this, and right here, actually what I'm going to do is to just say, so for this play count, I'm just going to say track dot play count, and for this duration text, I'm just going to say track dot duration text, and then for the track name, I'm just going to say track dot name, because that's what is here. Name, duration text, play count. And then for the artist, I'm just going to say track dot. So we need to know the artist. Actually, the artist is just the current artist name. I don't think we got that. We didn't actually get that. But what we can just say right here is, if I come in here, name. That's the name of the artist. So the artist is basically the current artist, like this. Now let's see how this pans out. So right here, let me click on refresh, and let's see what shows. So once again, it should show us the whole details of Taylor Swift. Right now it shows us the monthly listeners and everything, but as you can now see, it gives us this. So right here we have all the songs, we have everything, we have the play count, we have the, this is the particular one, which is the duration, and this is good. So now all of this is working. The next thing we just want to do is to, first of all, this is not really looking nice. We're going to take care of that. And the second thing is, when a user clicks on any of these songs, we want these songs, we want to take them to the music page so they can actually listen to any of these songs. Now let's take care of the way this looks. So what we're going to first do is we need to arrange this. So right here we are using Tailwind. Because we imported Tailwind, I can just quickly fix that. So what I'm going to do is right here, instead of using flex, I'm just going to say grid, and I'm going to remove justify between. I'm going to say grid colons 3, right? And right here I'm just going to say justify self end. I'm going to do the same for the duration text, and this should fix that. I'm going to save this, and what I just did was I just made sure that all of this aligned, and they aligned mostly at the end. So you're going to see what I mean when this runs successful. So as you can see, everything aligns at the end, right, in both. So now it's looking way better. And now that we have that, the next thing we want to do is to take a user to listen to each of these songs. So what we can now do is to come back in here, and we're just going to say, so if I open this div, I'm going to say A, close it, and right here, just going to paste that. And now in here, I'm going to say F, and I'm just going to say slash music slash track.id. Now if I come back in here, you can see that track.id gives us the ID of that particular song, and we can take them to the music page. Now let me save this, and once I hit refresh again, this should now update, but it should be clickable. So I'm not sure what happened. Let's hit refresh to make sure this loads successfully, and everything should load. So as you can see, everything loaded. And now let me click on this, just one, and this is called Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift. So as you can see, this works perfectly fine, showing all the details correctly. Now, if I go back, you can now see that we've successfully been able to show a user's profile and also all their songs. So we can now see all the songs an artist has done. We can click on it to see to listen to the song. But the last thing we want to do now is to search for a song. So we want a user to be able to search for a song. And let's go straight to doing that. The next thing we're going to do is to implement the search feature in this application. So if we come back to the home page, I'm just going to go to the home page right here. Now this home page is going to have a bar where we can search for a song. So right here, you can see where it says, what do you want to listen to? So we want a user to be able to search for an artist or a song, and then like all the results will come out. So we're going to do that right now. The first thing we need to do is to go back into our code, and right here in index.html, that is where we have the code for this search bar. So in index.html, we're going to have to change that search bar into a form. I'm going to come here, and this is where we have the search bar, I believe, and we're going to change this search bar into a form. So right here, what we're just going to do is to come under this header, and we're going to create a new HTML form. I'm going to create this here. I'm going to cut this out, and then I'm going to end it or close that form just right under the div tag. So what we're going to do is to just indent this properly. And now that this is done, we're going to have to say action. Now this time around, we want the action to go to another URL called search. So we have to come here, and in URLs, we have to create a new URL. And this time around, the URL is going to be called search. I'm just going to paste this. I'm just going to change all the inputs to search. So the name is going to be search, and then it's going to go into the function search from the views.py, and the name of this particular URL is going to be search. Now we're going to come into views, and we're going to have to create. So I'm just going to collapse this so we can have a better viewing. So right here, I'm just going to do it right under index. Right here, I'm just going to say dev search. Going to take a request. And then for now, we're just going to say return render request. And if I open up the template, you're going to see right here that we have a page for the search. So search.html. I'm just going to say search.html. I'm going to save this, and now I can come back in here and save this URL, and I can come in here and say search. So let's just make sure there's actually a URL called search. If I come here and go to /search, let's see. Okay, so we have this. Before we move forward, let's make sure this search page is looking good. I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to open up search.html. As you can see, we have a external CSS file that this is being linked to. So what I'm just going to do is to use load static, and I'm just going to use an extension called auto Django to add the format to this particular CSS file. So right here, what I did was I pressed Command Shift P, and it brought out my command palette, and you just need to search auto Django and then hit enter. So once you hit enter, what it's going to do is that it's going to look around your old code, and wherever we're using or linking a static file is automatically going to add this static format needed by Django. So that is what I did. You can also do that manually if you want. I just used that extension because it is helpful. So now if we come back in here and hit on refresh, you can now see that we have a decently looking page. So now what we're going to do is to come back into index, and I'm going to close up this, and we want to send this. We can send it using a post or get method, but I just prefer to use a post method. So I'm just going to say method equals post, and now whenever we have a post method or use a post method in Django, we have to say csrf token. Now that we have that, the next thing is for this input, we need to give it a name. So we're going to give this input a name of search query. Now that we have that, the next thing is to make sure that this button has a type of submit. Now that we know that, this whole form is complete. Now we can use this in the search view right here, because remember, when a user is trying to search, or when a user inputs something right here, no, not right here, if I go back to the home page, so when a user inputs something right here and clicks on search, that input or that search term is going to be sent to views.py, and specifically is going to be sent into this search function. So now what we're going to do in this search function is just to say if, I'm going to come here, I'm going to say if method dot, actually if request the method is equals to post, then we want to get that search query. So search query will be equals to request dot post search query. And for now, since we already have that search query, we don't really need to do anything else. The only thing we're going to do is to just say if this is a post method, then we want to do this, but else if it's not a post method, we just want to render this page normally. So that is what we're doing, and we're going to take care of this, everything under this in a bit. But before we continue, what I'm going to do is to head over to the API that we're using, which is this Spotify scraper API, and I'm going to show you the endpoint we're going to be targeting. So right here, if you see this search, once again, this Spotify, the link to this will be in the description below, so you can just easily access this. So if you come here and click on search, you're going to see that we have this particular code. And if I come into example results, what you can see is that when a user inputs a term, so this is a term right here, we could input something like Drake or Michael Jackson, we could input any term to search. And when a user inputs that term, it's going to bring out a bunch of results. It's going to bring out different types of results, like albums, results, artists, episodes, genres, playlist, and singles, also known as tracks. But for us, we're only really concerned about the tracks. So we just want a user to be searching for a song. That's what we want to do. So what we're now going to do is when a user search for something, we're just going to take out the result of the tracks, basically. So now after that, we're going to get all of those data and then show it to in the HTML page or in the front end of this website like this. Now I'm just going to copy this code, which is the code for the search. And what I'm going to do is right here, I'm just going to paste this like this. So just going to make sure it has the correct indentations, and I'm going to remove import requests. So we have this. The next thing we need to change is jazz. So instead of jazz, we want the term to be the search query that the user is trying to search for, right? So now we're just going to paste this. And if I come back in here, there is something. So if you come here, once again, as you can see in the example results, it gives you so many data, like as I said, podcasts, playlists, everything, but we just want tracks, just singles. So if I come into type, we're just going to come here and click on track. Now if you come here and click on track, this is just going to show you only results for tracks, right? Instead of showing all of this, so that we don't have too much data to deal with. So we're just kind of minimizing the data to the ones we need. Now, as you can see, the query string has changed. What I'm just going to do is to just copy everything once again and come here, and I'm going to get rid of all of this and just update it. I'm just going to do the same thing again. And right now, I'm going to make sure it has the same indentations and remove that. So instead of jazz, I'm going to say query, search query. Now that is good, and the type is track. Now, once we have this, the next thing is to have the headers, which is already done, and then the response. We don't really need JSON or response because we're not printing anything for now. We're just going to store that in a variable. So what we're going to do, first of all, I'm going to create an empty list. So I'm going to say track list. Once I get all the details of the track list corresponding to that search query, then I'm going to update this track list with those details. But now let's just create an empty list. And what I'm just going to do is to say if response the status code is equals to 200. So I'm just trying to get if this request was sent successfully and we actually got some response. If that is true, then I want to say data is equals to response response.json. Now I want to actually store that response in a variable called data. The next thing I'm going to do is so if I come back in here, I'm going to test this endpoint. So let me just search something like Drake, and now I can test it. So I searched Drake and I filtered it to only tracks. Let me test it and then see the response. So as you can see, we have a simple response now compared to all of this. So what we're just going to do is I'm just going to come here, and as you can see, there are two things we are going to get. The first thing is going to be the total count. So this is just the set results corresponding to that term. I think it limits it to 1000 results, which is quite good. And under items, it shows us the first 50. So what we're just going to do is to get all of these 50 results. So as you can see, this items is basically all the tracks. This is the first track. This is the name of the song, the ID, the duration in milliseconds, the duration in text, and also the artist name, as you can see, and everything we need. So we're going to use this and get all of the track. I'm going to come back here now, and the first thing I want to get is to say search results count. I'm just going to say data. Now under data, we're going to say tracks. So we have to come into track to get anything. So I'm just going to say tracks. And under tracks, let's see what the name is. Under tracks, we're just going to say total count. Now the next thing we're going to get is the whole tracks itself. So we just got the total count, but now we want to get all of these items right here, which is a list of all the songs or all the tracks in dictionary format. So now I'm going to say tracks equals to, and we're just going to say data square bracket tracks square bracket items. Good. So now we have this particular result, all of these items, all of these 50 tracks stored in this variable called track. Now what we want to do is just to get the specific information we need. So what do we need from this track? We just need the track name, we need the artist name, the duration of that track, we need the track ID, and then we need the track image. So we're going to get all of those details. Let's do that one after the other. So the first thing we're going to do is to first loop through this track list. So we're going to say for track in tracks, track underscore name going to be equals to track, because it is a dictionary. So each of these track is a dictionary. That's why we're using this format right here. So now we need to get the key of the name. So under each track, the key is name. So we're just going to say name. The next thing we're going to do is to get the artist name. So this, we just want to get the first artist, which is the main artist of the song. We're going to say artist name is equals to track square brackets. And so if I come back in here, so in each track, to get the artist name, we need to come into the artist list, and let's see what else. We need to get the first one, and then we just need to say name. So this is what we need. So we're going to go into the artist list, and then we're going to get the first one. So like this, and then we're going to get the name like this. Now the next thing we want to get is the duration of that song. So we're going to say track, and I'm pretty sure this is just on its own. If I come back here and I close all of these items and open it up, if I open one, I can just see duration text to get it in minutes. I'm just going to say duration text like this. And the next thing I want to get is the track ID. So I'm just going to say track ID is going to be equals to track square brackets. And we're just going to see what that is. Just ID directly. ID. Good. Now we have all of these details. The next thing we need to get is the image of that track. Now remember, this doesn't actually give us the image directly, but we wrote a function to get the image of that track as long as we have the ID of that track and the name of that track. So we actually have those details. So this is the name and this is the ID. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is to get the image of that track. So to get this, we need to use this get track image right here. So remember, this image returns the URL or the link to the image of that track. So what I'm just gonna do, or actually what I'm gonna do is to come into profile. So in profile, we already wrote the code for that, and I'm just gonna copy it. So this is it right here. So we actually already wrote the code to do that. I'm just gonna show that visually. As you can see, we have this code, and it just says if get track image and track ID, which is this track ID, and track name. We need to update this track name because it's not the same thing, and we also need to do the same for this track name. So what we're just saying is if this gives us a response, then we want to store that response in a variable called track image. I'm just going to give it underscores to make it more readable, or else we're just giving it like a default image. So that's what we're doing. So now we have the track image also, and what I'm just going to do, let me just make this look a little better. So now what I'm going to do is, outside this if else, I'm going to come here and say track list, which was the empty list we created earlier, dot append, and I'm going to append a dictionary. I'm going to start with the track name. I'm going to say track name, going to be given the value of track name, and artist name, going to be artist name, and duration, going to be duration. And then we're also going to set the track ID, and we're just going to say track ID, and also the track image, we're going to say track image, like this. Now that we have all of these details, I'm going to create another. So right here under this, the initial if, I'm going to create another dictionary. I'm going to name it context, and I'm just going to give it two details. So the first thing we need to give it is the search result count, which we got. I'm gonna give it a value, that, and then the next thing is this whole track list, and then we're gonna give it a value of track list also. So now that we have this, what we can just do is to render the search.html page, but this time around we're going to give it or pass this context dictionary into it. So this is good. This whole function should be working now. And if I go into search.html, I'm just going to open up search.html. I'm going to drag it closer, and right now in search.html I should be able to now give it all those details or use all those details. So what I'm going to do is right here where we have this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come into search results, and I'm just going to give it like the amount of results that we got. I'm just going to say, I could just come in here and copy the key. I'm going to say search results, and I'm just going to say results. So that is the amount of result that we got. And so I'm going to come here, and what I'm looking for is under this single track row, I want to loop through all the track in the track list. I'm going to say for track in track list, and I'm going to end the for loop right here like this. Just going to say end for like this. Now for that right here where we have the name of the song, we're just going to say track, the track name. I'm going to copy this, and for the artist we're going to say track the artist name. And right here where we have the alt of the song, I'm just gonna say track name as the alt. And for the image of that song, I'm just gonna say track image. So this is what we're gonna do. And right here where we don't really need this play amount of streams. And right here where we have the duration, I'm just gonna say track dot duration, like this. Now this should be working. We could just try this out and see what comes up. I'm gonna come back in here and I'm gonna hit refresh on this index page. So what I'm gonna do now is to just test this out. I'm just gonna search for an artist. I'm just gonna say Drake, and I'm gonna hit enter, and this should query this particular API right here, and it should get all the response we want. So it's gonna get the image, it's gonna get the list of artists, list of artists song that correspond to that particular search term, and it should render it. So I'm just going to swipe here. It should then make all of these operations, get the details, and then render it in the search.html page. So right now we should be redirected to the search.html page, and since we correctly looped through all the results, this should work perfectly. So let's see what that does. So right here, as you can see, this worked perfectly. It gives us the amount of search results, and you can see we have all of these songs by Drake. Every single song is by Drake, and it also has songs that Drake is featured in, which is good. So as you can see, this is by Travis Scott featuring Drake. So yes, and it gives us a lot of response. Now this is good, but the last thing we need to do is to make sure that when a user click on any of this song, it takes them to the page to actually play this song, so they can listen to this song. Because right now if they click on it, nothing happens. So for us to do this, it's actually going to be quite easy. What we're going to do is to come here and just create a simple a tag. So right here in this div, just going to create an a tag, and I'm going to close that a tag right here. And this a tag is just going to go to, I'm just going to say /music/ track dot, now let's make sure we are giving it the correct ID, track ID. This should do the work. We're going to come here and just hit refresh on this. So what we did right here, if I come here real quick, what we did was we just made this a link, a clickable link. So if a user clicks on the track name or the artist name under this search result in our page right here, then it should actually take them to the page to play that song. So as you can see, we said /music, which is the URL we created right here, and it's taking an ID, and that ID in here is track.id. So what we did was redirecting the user to listen to this music and taking them to this page. This should work successfully, theoretically, but let's see what the result is. So right now, if I click on any of this, you can now see that it's clickable. I can drag it. I'm just going to open it in new tabs. I'm going to open two different ones, and I'm just going to wait for that to load. So as you can see, this is one of the first song, and this is the second song right here, which is good. This is what we need. Let me just see another song. So this is a song by Nicki Minaj featuring Drake. Let's see how that looks. Good. It has its own album or its own music cover, and as you can see, the duration are different. So we come here just so you can see that everything is working, and we can also play this song. I'm just not going to play it because of copyright, but now you can see that everything is working fine in regards to the search feature. Now what we also want to do is to make sure a user can search from this page as well, because right now if I search something and click on enter, it doesn't really do anything. That's because we only made a user to be able to search from the home page. So to make changes to this, what I'm just going to do is to come into index.html, and right here where we have this search bar or this search form, I'm going to copy the whole header right here like this, and I'm going to come into search.html, go into that same header, and I'm going to paste it. I'm just updating it with the form. So basically with the new header, and we don't need this. This is all we need. So if I come back in here right now and I just go to this page normally, as you can see, it shows a blank result. But now if I try to search someone, I'm just going to say Travis, and let's see what happens. So that what I just did was to update this particular form with the form that we created in index, because we already added everything we need, which is that the action should go to search, the method should be post, CSRF token should be there, the name right here, and this should be a type of submit. If I had to do all of that manually again here, it's just going to take unnecessary time. So now let's just come back and we just want to see the results once again. If we make sure this, actually what we can do here is, instead of saying this should go to search, we could remove this and this could be blank. That could work also, but taking this to search directly works. So if that goes to search, that comes to this URL right here, and that goes to views.search, which is this views.search, and that should render search again. So it should work. So as you can see, this works. So we have Travis Scott SQL mode. Basically have all the songs right now. Now this is good. This is what we want. Now the last thing that we need to do is to just clean up the whole site. So the whole site right now is not really, I would say, in the best state, just because like there are some links that are not working. Like if I click on this search, if I click on home, it doesn't even take me anywhere. And this is for the whole site. So I'm just going to clean up the whole site, and I'm going to come here, and this is just for the front end. So I'm going to start with index.html. Let me just go to the home page. So as you can see, for me to go to the home page, I have to come to the URL and start going there. So I don't want that. So I'm just going to go to the home page. And as you can see, what I'm going to do is to leave this and just remove this and remove this. We don't really need that. So I'm just going to come right here, scroll all the way to the top. So this is where we have top section of the sidebar. Just going to get rid of this. And do we even need a bottom section? No, we don't. So I'm just going to get rid of the whole bottom section like this and this. So this should be perfect. I'm going to save it and hit refresh. So this should be perfect. And if you come here, we have a good looking header. So let's just come back to see. Good. So this should be okay. But one more thing is, when I click on search, I want it to take me to the search page. And when I click on home, I want it to kind of refresh this page. So for me to do that, it's quite easy. Right here where we have home, I'm just going to leave that as slash. And right here where we have search, I'm just going to say slash search. Like this. And that should take care of that for us. So let's just come back in here. So now if I click on this, as you can see, it took me to the search page. So I want that to be consistent throughout the whole website. So I'm just going to come back here, and I'm going to copy all of this. Actually, I'm just going to copy the whole sidebar. So this sidebar div, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to open up this bar. We don't need it for the login, but in the music, we need that. So I'm just going to close up this sidebar and paste that in like this. Save that, come to profile. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So we're also it's gonna do that. Sidebar, paste that in, save. For search, same thing. So we have the sidebar right here. Just paste that in, and we don't need it for sign up. So now if I come back in here to the search page, so if I click on search, it should just take me directly to the search page. And if I click on home, I should be able to come back to the home page. And if I want to log out, I should be able to log out and all of the good stuff. So now the whole site is good. It should be ready for deployment. So if I click on, let's say, this song, any of these songs, it should open up that song, and it should give me the options to play, fast forward, and all of that. So as you can see, we have all the details for this song, the duration, and we can play the song. So this is good. This is exactly what we want. We've come to the end of this tutorial video. In the next video, we're going to deploy this application onto the web using Zeet. So I hope you understood everything we did in this video. If you did, please don't forget to click on the like button and subscribe. and also drop a comment if you have any question or if you have anything to say. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.